Decentralization with one central promise: bring government closer to the people. But how far have we really traveled? From district assemblies and local development planning to the persistent concerns over inadequate resources, limited local autonomy, weak citizen participation, and the appointment of MMDCEs, decentralization remains one of Ghana's unfinished governance projects. And now government says it wants to reset the system. The new National Decentralization Policy and Strategic Framework 2026 to 2030 proposes deeper political, administrative and fiscal decentralization, stronger local economic development and greater citizen participation. So at the center of the proposed reforms is the plan to move towards the direct election of MMDCEs alongside changes to the legal and institutional framework governing local government. But the big question is whether this will finally give local authorities the power, the resources and accountability mechanisms they need to deliver meaningful development. What lessons have we learned from Ghana's decentralization journey? What exactly emerged from the national dialogue that was held last week here in Accra and subsequent consultations as well? And critically, what happens next? So tonight on State of Affairs, we take a hard look at the current state of decentralization, the reforms government is proposing, the implications of elected MMDCEs, fiscal autonomy, local accountability, and citizen participation. My guest is at the center of this process. Sometimes I don't envy him at all. Well, he's the Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Coordinating Committee on Decentralization, Dr. Gameli Kewuribe Hoedoafia. An experienced public policy expert, he's a governance, reform strategist, and also a researcher, and he has about 2 decades of work experience both in Ghana and outside the jurisdiction as well. And so, Doc, good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
I hope you're doing very well.
I'm very good. Very good.
Fantastic.
Excited to be here.
Oh, great, great. Last week we had a brief conversation, and I'm glad that you honored the invite to be in the studio this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Well, so this is State of Affairs. Don't move a muscle. Remember, State of Affairs is also brought to you in association with MTN. MTN says it is time for you to go digital. So that little plastic SIM card that you're using, Charlie, nobody's using that any longer. We are all moving to the eSIM. And MTN says you don't have to travel all the way to any of their offices for that. In the comfort of your home, even in the studio, you can just go on your phone, download the My MTN app, and just like that, you are activated with the eSIM. So go SIMless with MTN eSIM. And remember, they are everywhere you go. We'll take a breather. When we come back, the conversations continue. Well, grateful for your company again. This is State of Affairs here on GH1 Television. I am Joshua Kujo Mensah, and my guest is the Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Decentralization, Dr. Gameli Hoedoafia. Doc, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joshua.
Yeah, so like I said in my introductory notes there, you're one person I don't envy at all because it looks like there's so much that you have to deal with at the committee. But talk to me about Ghana's decentralization. Really, where are we?
Thank you. Good evening to our viewers this evening. Ghana has been implementing decentralization reforms since 1988. Even under the PNDC era, we transitioned into the constitutional era with Act 462, that's the Local Governance Act, and sometime in 2016, we took stock and decided that we needed to strengthen the legal framework. And so we came up with Act 936, which later was amended in 2017 to 940. Now, at the time, there was a lot of emphasis on ensuring that at the local level, people participated, and were able to hold some level of a certain level of accountability from local leaders. But overall, the emphasis was still on central government in terms of the structure, if you looked at it, so that the president still, appointed MMDCs, and then the people only had an opportunity through their elected assembly members, and as well as the 30% who were also elected by, or who were also nominated or appointed by the president, to then, if you like, rubber stamp, or reject. So it has not been the decentralization that the 1992 Constitution envisages. Because if you look at Articles 35(6)(d), it talks about giving, it says we should decentralize the administrative and financial machinery, right, to the regions and the districts, and offer every opportunity to Ghanaians where they live to be able to be part of the governance arrangement, the decision-making at all levels of government. Now, so if you look at it from that point of view, it really means devolution. What do we mean? That people have a choice to be able to elect their own leaders, that they have greater autonomy when it comes to the finances, how their local areas should be shaped, right? That really is the constitutional imperative, that more power in our bosom, that where you and I will live, that we have the opportunity to be able to shape how that place looks like. Building the Ghana that we want, but doing it in such a way that we are creating local solutions to local problems. Right? That's the constitutional imperative. But in practice, we've had this situation where it hasn't happened quite like that. So our policy, for instance, over the years, has recognized certain definitions in terms of what we mean by decentralization in the context of Ghana, that even at the national level, when we talk about decentralization, we mean ministerial realignment and restructuring, where ministries, departments, and agencies at the center would focus on policy formulation, monitoring, and evaluation only, right? Not implementation. Yeah, that they will focus on policy formulation, monitoring, and evaluation. So that if you check the Civil Service Law 327, I believe it is, in there, this is stated in law. And then in policy, it's in the National Decentralization Policy as well. Now, what does that mean? It means that we can't have a situation where I am seated in Bunkubu Yoyo as a local leader, and then before we know it, a contractor shows up, right? He's clearing a site and he's building a market, or building a KVIP, or building a lorry park, right? That shouldn't be the case. All of that should be within the ambit or the purview of the local leaders. And local people should determine through their medium-term development plans and annual action plans, they will determine what the priorities are for that locality, so that we don't have disjointed or a disconnect between what is being implemented and what are the true aspirations of the people in terms of what do we want. Maybe we want our road fixed. You want to give us a market. Or we want a market. You are giving us a clinic or some mechanized borehole. So we really, from the constitutional perspective, we sought to try and clarify, right, that, okay, both in law and in policy, this is what our Constitution wants us to do. Now, we say that at the regional level, we have what we call deconcentration. So that at that level, it's more like the central government is giving away some of its powers, right? It's giving a little bit of it. So the officials at that level really do not have autonomy. That everything they do, they will say that we need to refer to Accra. Right? So essentially that's deconcentration. They don't have the power to take the decisions. They have to really get the clearance from the top before they do it. Then we have the level of the districts, where we are aspiring for devolution, which is greater autonomy or complete autonomy, right, in terms of the decision making. That, okay, we live in Lankwantana Medina together, right? We have determined that this is how much we want to charge for property rates, business operating permits, for masts and what have you, and this is how we want to spend that money. Yes, we are getting money from the DACF, right? When that money comes, this is how we want to spend that money. So together, they're taking the decision, they're identifying the priorities. So every single individual living in that locality is part of the decision-making process, and they own it. Unfortunately for us, we have a situation where in Ghana, many people live in localities, they don't even know the name of the assembly. Yeah. They don't even know the town hall, that is the assembly offices. They don't know, right? And so there's a certain disconnect between the people and then the local governments.
Right.
And then also between the local governments and the central government or central level institutions. So I call it a dual disconnect, right? And that is essentially because of how we have implemented decentralization up to a certain point. Now, we also have a certain further layer beneath the districts, and that level we call delegation. So the districts themselves are able to delegate some of their functions to the unit committees, area councils, and what have you. Now, they can say, help us to do sanitation matters, mobilize the community to clean, help us to raise, to collect our own source revenues, market tolls and what have you. They can delegate some of those functions to that level. So we call it delegation. However, the important point is that the delegated functions, if anything happens, say a unit committee member takes a bulldozer and clears someone's house, right, inadvertently or deliberately in trying to fix a problem, and then they are sued, or there's damage and then there's cost implication, he doesn't take responsibility, or that unit committee doesn't take responsibility for it. It is the district level, the autonomous level that has to take responsibility for it, because they are delegating some of their functions further down. Now, the local governments, as we have them in Ghana, are set up as body corporates, right? So they can sue and be sued, right? And they were set up that way so that they have a certain level of autonomy in law, flexibility in law, and it was meant to also be in practice for them to be able to take charge as corporate bodies to develop their local areas so that they are supported by civil servants at that level. So in 2010, about 30,000 civil servants were hived off from the civil service to the local government service, so that the local government service also stand on its own. And today, the local government service it's probably the largest recruiter in the Ghanaian economy. More than 34,000 staff, more than the civil service and more than any single business entity in this country. So there's a cohort of very competent local functionaries, engineers and what have you, with various departments that have been created with devolved functions. The challenges we have had up to this point is that some of those departments don't work the way they should. Others too are struggling for the needed type of capacity in terms of staffing. So you can have a situation where a number of districts have to share an engineer or a quantity surveyor and what have you. So we've had to come up with interesting ways of trying to ensure that the other places do not lose out. And so in a nutshell, this is what we had up to a certain point. And then come 2025, we decided that, okay, let's do a root and branch review of decentralization implementation up to that point. Remember that the old policy was from 2020 to 2024. So it had come to an end, and thankfully new government came in with new manifesto aspirations and what have you. So it gave us the opportunity to review implementation up to that point,
right,
and then also to integrate government's priorities. And we undertook a root and branch analysis, and we went down. We started with a bottom-up approach to formulating a new policy, because we wanted that it has to be a policy that all of us can relate to. The messaging has to be different, right? So it gives us a certain opportunity to renew and build on the past.
Right.
Because, they say that if you want to move forward to do great things, you have to look at your past. And so we had to essentially undertake that type of review. We realized that implementation over a certain period of time of our national policies, maximum was like 60%, which is not good enough. We should be talking about 80s and 90s, right? Even 100%. But if we are hanging around 60%, that's not good enough. So we thought, okay, what can we do differently this time?
Right.
And that's why you would see issues of, election of MMDCs. It's topical, but it's there. That the president says, okay, yes, I agree. I'll give away my power of appointment so that the local people become the appointee. They do the appointing. So that every 5 years or every 4 years, depending on whichever way we go, government says 5 years. So once we do 5 years, if you're delivering the goods, then the people definitely will give you, yes. But if not, then they give you the boot.
Right. So clearly, ideally, we have the laws and how the local government system should run. But then, practically, there are lapses. And so we are looking at the review here and there. But what do you think, or what have you realized as the bottleneck to us actually getting to maybe a 90% implementation of these beautiful laws that we have actually framed?
Thank you, Joshua. So one of the things we realized, or we found out, is that decentralization in Ghana has been largely supply-driven. Supply-driven instead of demand-driven. Now, what do I mean by supply-driven? It means the central government, leads the way when it comes to efforts to decentralize. So some have argued that, it's political patronage, if you like. So they will say, let's, hive off this, let's give them these powers a bit, and then make it seem like, you're giving local people really the power, but in fact, you're not. Now, what that does to us is that local people are not very, you remember I talked about a certain disconnect between the local and the center.
Yes.
Now, if local people paid attention or were fully involved and engaged in the processes, then they would demand more, right? That, okay, we in our local community, we want to be the ones that when we build our schools, right, we want that the teachers there should be recruited locally.
Right.
Whether they're coming from neighboring communities or they're coming from far away as Accra, right? But at least we are in charge. That we determine, we know the vacancies that exist for us. We know the areas where we really need the schools, what type of schools, right? And what our struggles are. They have the information, so they're seized with, the relevant information to be able to determine. But we have a challenge where our people are not demanding. So every time it's government that is giving the right supply. So some of the beautiful ideas we're taking forward, it's because the NDC as a government, remember that the People's Manifesto, before the 2004 manifesto, right, decided that we'll go around, they went around and took views from the people and realized that, look, this disconnect exists. And so it's important that we put forward these ideas of allowing the people to vote for their local leaders. So that way there's a greater semblance of ownership at the local level. But really, it should have been civil society organizations, local people, market women, traditional authorities, even assembly members, people, unit committee members, people at the local level should have been organizing themselves into coalitions, working with institutions such as the NALAG and other, broad-based civil society organizations to demand from central government to say, you know what, we are better equipped at our level under the principle of subsidiarity. Now, the principle of subsidiarity is fundamental to any decentralization agenda. That, what does it mean? That decisions about fixing any challenges, right, should be taken at the level where the issues affect the people the most, right? Because the people at that level, they understand. So that when you sit at the center, you see more data, information. So even if you send your officers out to the regions and the districts to go and do monitoring and evaluation and come back, monitoring, when they come, they are presenting numbers to you.
Right.
Whereas if the man in Bunkrugu is in charge of it, he lives there, right? it's a lived experience for him.
Exactly.
If
so,
the road
so
is not much
it will
trouble,
be different from someone who is just sent there
exactly
to assess the
right.
situation.
If the road is bad, he's there. If the water is terrible, he's there, right? The struggles that he has to go through to get to a hospital or get his wife to a clinic when she's pregnant or wants to deliver, all of it is a lived experience for him. And that's why we talk about local solutions to local problems. And that's really the principle of subsidiarity there. And so that is what we are driving at. Okay. And that's at the center of the new national decentralization policy and strategic framework for 2026 to 2030.
Well, we'll talk more about this particular strategy and also get to listen to the man talk about the dialogue that was held just last week here in Accra. Now, it brought together all the regional ministers, and interestingly, they all made presentations about what is happening in their various regions. I was there, and so I have a few questions on that, though, that I will put into Dr. Hoedoafia.
Yes, 3 syllables. Break it down.
Well, Hoedoafia.
Yeah.
So that's it. We'll take a breather here. On return, we'll be bringing you more. But then, if you are in the market for a quality vehicle that combines style, combines performance, comfort, reliability, and luxury, then look no further than EBA Motors. They are your trusted automotive partner, offering you an outstanding selection of premium and quality vehicles from some of the world's most respected brands, including Mercedes-Benz, Range Rover, Toyota, Honda, you name it, they have it. So don't waste time at all. Quickly dash to their showroom, and it's at Dansoman Runabout, right behind the Gold Filling Station. That's where you find EBA Motors. And you can get there, get a vehicle that suits your style, and most importantly, also suits your pocket. Make sure you visit them quickly and get your vehicle now. And you can also find them on social media, EBA Motors, or call 0206 724 872 or 0206 724 883. EBA Motors, driving excellence, delivering value. We'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for staying on with us. This is State of Affairs, and today we're shining a spotlight on Ghana's decentralization agenda, getting to understand exactly where we are and what the future looks like for us. And my guest is the Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Decentralization, Dr. Gameli Kewuribe Hoedoafia. I got it right this time around. So, Doc, before we went, you were talking about the new agenda, 2026 to 2030, and the focus of that particular agenda as well. Run us through exactly what is contained in this new guideline, I should say.
Thank you. If we take the vision and the theme for the policy, it's resetting democratic decentralization for accountable public service delivery and accelerated local development. Now, if you look at it, there are three sub-themes in there.
Okay.
There's the bit about resetting democratic decentralization. Then there's a bit about accountable public service delivery. And then there's accelerated local development. So these three sub-themes come together. Now I'll explain.
Right.
Now, we are resetting democratic decentralization because remember I said to you that after having implemented decentralization up to this point for almost 37 years, if we go as far as 1988, you know, and if we start from 1992, then we're looking at 35 years thereabouts. Now, that's a long time of, you know, implementing something and then not arriving at the aspiration that we all desire. And so we thought, what are some of the critical building blocks in democratic decentralization? Number one, under the political arena, the opportunity for local people to be able to own the processes at the local level, to hold fire to their local leaders, right? So that ever so often when they go to the ballot box, they say kokromoti, you get to be able to express yourself at the local level where you live, how you want the direction, the development of that area should be like. And so we say that the president will no longer, you know, appoint, but the president, local residents will do the voting. Yeah. Now, that is a sea change. It's a fundamental change from what we have been experiencing up to this point. In the same way, other building blocks such as funds must follow functions, that's fiscal decentralization, that we're saying that more money, the resources that the central government traditionally used to implement these things from the center, if you give away the functions or the responsibilities, then the money that you hitherto use to finance that money shouldn't stay in Accra. The money should follow the functions to the local level. Right. So it's a basic principle in fiscal decentralization that the finances must follow the functions. Wherever the functions are sent to, we should do that. Follow. And so we say that at the local level, more money. And so at the moment, since 2025, more money is going down to the local governments. Since we started the DACF about 30 years ago, right, from that period all the way up to 2024, only 16 billion of total money went directly to the local governments. But in 2025 alone, the direct payments were up to about 83%. And that meant that if you did 16 billion before and in 1 year, you sent about 7 billion, right? That's almost half of about 30 years you did in 1 year. So there's significant resources following the functions to the local level. Now we need local people to be very, very interested. They should follow the money. Yeah. The money that the Minister for Finance is making sure, and the President says, look, let them have the money. So the money is gone down to the local level. Whatever procurement that the local leaders are doing, every single one of us, we have to be very interested in it, right? And so we're saying, get on board, get involved in how this money is spent at the local level. So we are shifting, or we have shifted how even resources went down to the local level. Okay. Now, in the policy, we have also agreed, and Cabinet has approved, that gradually we get to 7.5%. over the tenure of President Mahama. Okay. Right? So that the constitutional minimum is 5%. We anticipate a situation where 7.5% becomes the constitutional minimum, so that there's flexibility to then be able to build onto it. Right? People say, the local level, you're just going to pour money down. But the point is that every single one of us, we live within the local government area. Even the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Ghana, I mean, where we are seated today, right, is in the local government area. This is Korle, right? So it's important that there is that recognition that the money is not about Accra, even though Accra sits, within several, depending on where you are, several local government areas, right? And so the Ministry of Finance, if you sit at the Ministry of Finance, you should know that where you are seated is probably Korle, and the money that should go out should not be seated at the center. It shouldn't just go to the MDAs, but rather it should find its way to the local government level so that all of us can benefit from that money, so that we can have better drains, better roads, better healthcare services, all of that, right? So there's a huge shift when it comes to that. Then there's the area of popular participation and accountability. Remember, I was talking about us getting involved. Exactly. And so we are creating the spaces, both in law. So we are reviewing the Local Governance Act, for instance, 936. We have a zero draft in place already that very soon we're going to have a new local governance law, because we have implemented this one for about 10 years. And yes, there are a few chinks in there. And so we want to be able to fix those challenges within the law, and also strengthen citizens' accountability mechanism, social auditing. We want that when you start the planning process, when you are budgeting, the people should be carried along. We want that when you are spending, the people should be carried along. And so every one of us must take an interest, because we are creating the spaces within the law for that to happen. Now, we're talking about decentralized planning. Decentralized planning has to do with how our planning system works. For instance, we're bringing a few more innovations to bear in that area. Remember that when we have the floods or during the rainy season, local governments take a lot of bashing, especially those in the urban settlements, right? They say, what are they doing? And then people are looking forward to the central government stepping in to do something, right? Because currently, the situation is that we have various planning systems happening at that place. So we have a unit called Central Administration, that's for development planning. Then we have a department called Fiscal Planning Department. Then we have others situated within other areas, in the Works Department. So we are harmonizing, for instance, the planning system, so that once we say we are planning our local area and we are producing a local development plan, it's all hands on deck, right? All the various technical expertise. Remember, I talked about the fact that we also want to ensure, under administrative decentralization, that we are strengthening the capacity of the functionaries at that level, so that the ones that we lack at the moment, we will recruit to fill those. Okay. And so there are discussions ongoing. The head of local government service, Professor Lord Benson, is working very hard with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that we are able to recruit the relevant and requisite skills that are needed to be able to drive administrative processes at the local level. Right. So if you look at it, in all of the areas, we have this key area called local economic development, because remember, we have 261 MMDAs. Those are the 261 local economies that make up the national economy. So that when people at the center talk about the national economy, it's actually made up of all these 261 small economies that come together to make the national economy. And so what must we do? We have to ensure that we are stimulating those local economies. Right. And through the measures that we have in place in the local economic development policy area are the ones that we believe would take us to where we want to get to. Right. So all local authorities and the regions are meant to be able to identify, for instance, what are the growth poles in our locality. Is it, do we have clinker? Is it agriculture? Yeah. Even if it's agriculture, what kind of crop are we looking at, right? And what kinds of support can the local government put in place? How can they work with central government and private sector to be able to make sure that those growth poles are enhanced or are taken advantage of, to be able to ensure that jobs are created, that there's money in the pockets of local people? Because remember that where I live, I won't bother coming to Accra if my local economy is strong enough, that there are jobs at that level for me to, to do. When I wake up, there's something I can go and do and get my resources at the end of the month at that level.
Right.
So those are the 6 thematic areas. Now, we have also added another layer, right? This has never happened before. We added another layer, which we call the cross-cutting teams. Okay. These are also 6 of them. We're looking at the issues of climate change, biodiversity, and the environment. Because remember, we are currently bedeviled with all kinds of environmental issues. People are polluting, when it rains, people are throwing, stuff into drains. And we all know the almighty Galamsey, right? All of that really, we say that at the local level, right? The local authorities and local communities should be at the forefront of fighting these things, so that no one can come into a certain locality to come and start to pollute their water source, right? And they will sit down and look.
Evidence points to the fact that they are even more complicit.
Yes. So the point is that
unfortunately they are.
So that comes to the issue of mindset. And mindset, ethics, and change management is one of the other very important cross-cutting thematic areas that we have identified.
Right.
That look, we can do all the beautiful laws, we can do all the beautiful policies, right? If the people who have to drive the system, who have to implement this, right, and the people who have to ensure that at the local level they are exerting the needed accountability, if they're not doing it, if their mindset is that, it's, it's a free-for-all, right, then there's a problem for us.
Right.
And so we're talking about this.
Well, thank you so much for staying on with us. And if you just tuned in, we're having a conversation with the Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Decentralization, Dr. Gameli Kewuribe Hoedoafia. And we're talking about Ghana's decentralization agenda, how far we've come, and what really lies ahead. And Doc, before we went on the break, I mentioned that I would come and talk about the one that the politicians seem very interested in, because I've had different MPs on the show, and consistently they mention that because we have not empowered the MMDCEs enough with authority to do what they are supposed to do, the people now channel their grievances to the MPs because they feel these are the people we voted for. I didn't vote for my MMDCE. Why should I go to him for the challenges that perhaps I want to see addressed in the locality? Where are we with that? Because it looks like one party wants the election done on non-partisan basis. Another one says, listen, whether we like it or not, it would still be around the partisan lines.
Thank you, Joshua. So it's important to clarify that actually when it comes to the law, the legal framework, MMDCs and MMDAs are quite enhanced in terms of empowered. Right. You know, the law offers them flexibility. It offers them the powers because the local government or the MMDA is the foremost planning authority when you enter that jurisdiction. And so they're really in charge of everything else that's happening at that level. So they have a lot of power to be able to do a lot of things. But yes, I get the bit about, the people wanting the MPs. Maybe it's because of what the MPs themselves have been saying. Because really, the MP is a legislator, right? It is not a development agent.
Sure.
Maybe they can be a facilitator, right? An advocate. But they are not the people who really should get their hands dirty doing and delivering the work, transformation at the local level, is really MMDCs, right? And currently, even though they are appointed by the president, they are seized with so much power in law to be able to deliver on that mandate and to engage with their people, right? Now, then we come to the big question of, okay, the election of MMDCs, as we have promised in the manifesto, as has been promised in the National Decentralization Policy and Strategic Framework. In there, we are clear that that aspiration, that power is moving away from the center, from the presidency to the local level, right? That we want to empower our local people, that you and I, where we live, we should be able to go put ourselves forward, right, to be voted for. And if we believe that we have what it takes, and I actually think that the best job to deliver, if you're really passionate about development in this nation, is to be a district chief executive, right, at all levels, whether it's a metro, municipality, or the district. That is the best job, I believe, if you're really passionate about development. That's where you should be wanting to get your name on that ballot paper so that the people can vote for you. Now, government has made, in response to the Constitutional Review Committee, and in accordance with the position as expressed in the policy. Now, if you look at all the various surveys that have been undertaken on this issue, the people of Ghana are very clear. They want, to elect their local leaders on non-partisan basis, because they feel that the acrimony that they see at the national level in parliament, they don't want that at the local level, right? Because remember, you and I, if we live next door to each other, we don't want that type of acrimony, right? We want to live peaceably with each other, not at loggerheads all the time because of politics, right? We can do that when it comes to the presidential thing. But when it comes to our local area, where you and I have to be at the forefront of, bringing about change, it should be non-partisan. And so they've been very clear consistently. You look at the Afrobarometer, you look at any other survey, the people of Ghana are very clear. And so government is a very listening government, and so decided that, yes, that's how we will go, right? And our professor, the father of decentralization in Ghana, Professor Kwamna Ahoy, talks about a certain concept of incremental gradualism, right? That, okay, yes, we go step by step, we build on to what we have, right? At a certain point, we review. We take stock of where we are, where we have come from, and where we want to get to. Have we gotten there? If we haven't, what are the refinements that we can introduce into the system to be able to get us to that level? And so for me, I see that, and I'll appeal to fellow Ghanaians to embrace the concept of the elections, right? That it's critical, it's imperative that all of us come on board, all of us are able to together ensure that we are putting ourselves forward. If it means writing petitions to the president to say, this is me, right? I live in Bunkuru Yoyo. This is my capacity. Right. And I believe that I have a job that I can do at the local level for my local area. Why not? Now, look at it in this way. Right. Women make up a very large portion of the national population. Sure. Young people also, right? But up to this point, we have not had the opportunity of a lot of women, taking charge or getting involved in local politics, right? And so we want to be able to change that. And so the bit about, if the 5 people are nominated, 2 of them at least would be women. And of the final short list, all 3 can be women, but at least one of them must be a woman. Right. That is quite imperative. That is quite a totemic shift, right, in how we can advance gender parity and ensuring that local women, right, our mothers, our sisters, are at the forefront of changing our localities, the places where you and I live.
Quite exciting, and I'm sure we definitely have to have a part 2 of this conversation, because we would have to talk more about the dialogue as well, and what I saw there. I need to interrogate some of the things that I saw. Unfortunately, this is how much time we have on the show. But Prof, hey, Doc, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure, and I promise my viewers that I will definitely bring you a part 2 of this conversation with Dr. Gameli Hoedoafia, who is the Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Decentralization. But before we go, quick one, guys. When was the last time you actually enjoyed standing in a queue? As for me, I hate queues, whether it's at the bank, at the grocery store. Nobody has time for that, and that's why exactly I am loving this new move from MTN. Now, if you've been waiting to switch to an eSIM, you know, the digital SIM that is built into your phone so that you don't need that little yellow plastic card, well, now is the time. MTN has indeed flipped the script, and you can literally set up your eSIM yourself right from your couch. No queues, no waiting, nothing. You just open the My MTN app, follow the steps, and boom, just like that, you are live. It is also the ultimate life hack. So grab your phone, download the My MTN app if you haven't already, and skip the queue today. Right there, that's MTN for you, everywhere you go. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Joshua Kujomensa. God willing, next week, we are back with more.